Hi everyone, welcome back to DGMZ diwan-e-ghalib-meri-zubaani. To all our returning viewers, we are happy you could join us again. And for the new viewers, we are delighted you discovered the podcast and decided to tune in for the first time. Now today's episode is part of the DGMZ Miniseries we are currently running, dedicated to the immortal love story of Layla and Majnun. Excuse me. There is a dedicated playlist for this series. You can access that from the homepage of the channel. As part of this mini-series, we are narrating the story of Layla and Majnun through a book. In addition, we are also exploring the story via paintings and Urdu shairi. So, today we are going to get into the narration from chapter 40. Let me check. Chapter 42. But before I get into the narration, DGMZ would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and appreciate Suluk Press Publishing House for allowing us to narrate this story from their publication titled The Story of Layla and Majnun Nizami, translated from the Persian and edited by Rudolph Gelpke. English version in collaboration with E. Matin and G. Hill. Final chapter translated from the Persian by Pirzia Inayat Khan and Omid Safi. In the description section of this episode, you can find a link to this book in case you want to own a copy. In addition, we will also paste the links of the DGMZ Ghazal episodes where Ghalib mentions Layla and Majnun. Another reminder to the viewers who are following this story with us, we just posted a video of Sher Shairi from Mirza Ghalib around Layla and Majnun. If you haven't accessed that, do so. I have a feeling you will enjoy those couplets thoroughly. Okay, so let's get into the narration for today. So I am going to start the narration from chapter 42 onwards. Start of narration. Among Majnu's relatives, there was one whose noble heart and keen mind had won the esteem of his fellow men. His name was Salim Amiri, and Majnu's mother was his sister. All who knew him thought highly of him. Yet modesty remained the mark of his dignity. This worthy man had always loved his nephew and dearly wanted to help him. But even he, who usually found a way out of every impasse and knew the cure for many an evil, had failed. Thus he had shared the younger man's sufferings only from afar, but as often as possible had sent presents of clothes and food to ease the hermit's misery. Now, however, the time seemed ripe to visit the lost one. Who knows? Perhaps there was still a way to lead the estranged youth back to his home. But first he must trace the wanderer's steps, leading far away from the world of men. So Salim mounted his strongest and fastest camel and set off. Caravans and inns became less and less frequent as he went, but that did not deter the courageous rider. Like a mad demon wind, he raced from desert to desert, never ceasing to search until in the end he discovered the fugitive in wild mountains where no human foot had penetrated before. But this hermit was not alone. Salim found his nephew amidst a horde of wild animals. Had he assembled all the inhabitants of desert and steppe into a single army. When the rider faced their camp, fear crept up his spine. He stopped, waved to Majnun, and shouted a greeting. "Who are you, and what do you want?" came the answer. "I am Salim, from the tribe of Amir," was the reply. "And I too am one with whom fate plays hazard on earth. But you should know that. I can see that the sun has changed you into a Negro, but am I not still your uncle?" Only then did Majnun recognize his visitor. He ordered his animals not to attack, received him with all honors, and asked him to be seated. Then he inquired about kinsfolk and friends, and his visitor's well-being. How surprised and happy was Salim to find his nephew so reasonable. Was this a madman, deserving of the name given to him? Of course, if one only judged by appearance, the mistake was understandable. But as he examined his sister's son closely from head to foot, Salim felt shame and grief rise in his heart. How could this have happened? Majnun walked like a corpse newly risen from the grave. Risen where and for whom? For the beasts of the wilderness. A corpse would at least wear a shroud, while this man was stark naked. No, a nobleman from the tribe of Amir must not expose himself like that. Not even here, in this man and God-forsaken hideout, where only stars, rocks, and animals could see him. That was intolerable. Uncle Salim could stand the sight no longer. He took out his second garment and held it in front of Majnun. "Forgive me. Would you mind putting this on? It is not decent that you should go naked. Not at least while I am here." "Clothes are useless to me," replied Majnun at once. "My body is hot enough without them. It is a furnace in which a fierce flame is burning. As soon as I put on a garment, I tear it to shreds." But the uncle did not give in. He implored and insisted until Majnun complied with his wish. Then the guest produced all kinds of food from his bag: halwa, sugared bread, and other delicacies. Who could have resisted? But the harder Salim pressed, the more stubborn Majnun became, refusing even to taste them. Instead, he gave the sweetmeats to his animals, and they liked them. When Salim realized that even his magic powers of persuasion were wasted, and that the choicest sweets would only be thrown to the dogs, he asked, "What do you feed on then? If you are human, not a demon, you must eat, you unhappy creature. But what do you feed on?" "My heart is Salim, sound like your name," replied Majnun, "even if my body has forgotten how to eat. All I can tell you is that I no longer desire food. A few roots and grasses are all I need. But I am not alone here. As you can see, my animals are only too happy to accept your presence. Watching them stills my hunger too." The uncle pondered these words for a little. Then he said, smiling broadly, "I understand. And perhaps you are right. After all, birds are caught in snares because they are greedy. Are human beings different? Our hunger is the snare in which fate catches us. The greedier we are, the greater the danger. Only he who, like you, is content with a little grass is truly free, a king in his world. That brings to mind a story which you must hear, the story of the Shah and the Dervish. Once upon a time, a mighty king rode past the hut of a hermit. This pious man had turned away from the world, directing all his thoughts and desires towards the other life. His hut was a miserable hole with crumbling walls. The king was surprised. He could hardly believe that anyone would want to live in such a hovel and asked his retinue, "What does this man do here? What does he eat? Where does he rest his head? Who is he?" "He is a holy man," answered the king's followers, "well known not to require sleep or food. That distinguishes him from ordinary humans." The Shah's curiosity was aroused. Reining in his horse and beckoning to his chamberlain, he approached the hermit. At some distance he stopped, waiting for his courtier to bring the holy man before him. The chamberlain advanced and said, "You, my man, have cut all ties with the world. You seem to be happy and content to live in this room, all alone. Why? Where do you find the strength to endure such misery? What do you eat?" The holy man had just crushed some plants found in the steppe where the gazelles graze. He held them up and replied with equanimity, "This is what I eat, my ration for the journey." The spoiled courtier, supercilious as are those who serve kings, grimaced and asked contemptuously, "Why do you live in such misery? If you entered the service of our Shah, you would have better food than grass." "What do I hear?" asked the dervish indignantly. "You call this grass? My dear sir, this isn't grass. These are honey blossoms. If you knew how good they taste, you would forget your Shah and not remain in his service for another hour." The king too heard these words, and being an intelligent man, realized their truth. Jumping from his horse and rushing up to the hermit, he rendered homage to him and kissed him. And the king was right. Free is the man who has no desires. The story of Layla and Majnun, chapter 43. Majnun liked Salim's story and listened with rapt attention. When his uncle had finished, Majnun appeared almost gay. He even laughed happily, jumped up, sat down again, and for a while vividly recalled the friends of his youth. He remembered them all and talked about them to Salim. Suddenly he thought of his mother. All gaiety faded from his face, and he said, with tears in his voice, "How is it that I have not thought of her for so long. Mother, my bird with the broken wings. Tell me quickly, how is she? Is she in good health, or has grief cut her down? I am her Negro slave, my face blackened by shame, yet how deeply I long to see her beauty. Here too, Salim was able to give good counsel. He decided at once to fulfill Majnun's wish. Perhaps the mother could persuade her son to return to his home and tribe. This king of wild beasts, was he not human after all? And did he not belong among other humans? Be sure that I will bring your mother to you, said Salim, when he took his leave. And he kept his promise, returning with her before many days had passed. When the mother recognized her son from afar, her heart shrank. How the rose had faded! How clouded the mirror had become! She was not afraid of the animals, lion, panther, and wolf. What concern were they of hers? She saw only her son in his unhappiness, and rushed as quickly as her tired feet would carry her to embrace, kiss, and caress her re-found child. Is that not a mother's way, always and everywhere? Without question, without demand, she simply follows the call of tenderness and pity. She now washed in a flood of tears the poor face, so wasted yet so familiar. Now she tamed the wilderness of his hair with a comb taken from the folds of her dress. How neglected he was from head to foot! Moaning softly and caressing him, she tended the wounds caused by thorns and stones. When Majnu began at last to resemble the boy Cas, and when both had tasted the first pleasure and the first grief of their reunion, only then did the mother recover her speech. My son, what a robber you are! Is life for you nothing but a game of love? Your father has been felled by the sword of death, which is also threatening me, and you are still drunk with the wine of your youth. How much longer? Your father died in grief and sorrow, and I am as good as dead, believe me. Come to your senses, rise and return with me, instead of despoiling your own nest. Take your example from the animals and birds of the wilderness. When night falls, they return to their nests and caves. Why not you? For how long will you hide from other men? For how long will you roam about without sleep or peace? Life is brief. It passes as quickly as 2 days. Prepare your bed and give yourself some peace. Why should you rest your head in caves? Why set your foot among ants and serpents? The serpent will bite you, and once you are dead, the ants will eat you anyway. So leave it at that. Stop torturing your soul. It is not a stone hardy enough to resist the force of the elements. Allow your soul its rest, and your heart its peace. The heart also is no rock, and you are not made of iron. Thus his mother beseeched him, and her words burned him with tongues of flame. "Your foot be my crown," he replied. "I am the pearl which tortures the oyster. I realize that, yet there is no other course. Where is my fault if I was given no choice? My life is in a desperate state, but I have not chosen my fate voluntarily. What is the good of all our striving? Each must play his allotted part. You should know that I have never been free to accept or to refuse my love, permeated by so much suffering and misery. Therefore, mother, do not insist on my return. You want me to free the bird of my soul from its cage. But this cage is my love. I would never succeed. Even if I returned home, I should only be caught in another trap, because what you call home is to me but a second prison, where I fear I would die unless I escaped again. My home is my love. Nowhere else am I at home. Leave me, therefore. Do not press me. You too are unhappy because I suffer. I know that, yet I cannot help it. I cannot forgive me." Majnu threw himself at his mother's feet as if he were her shadow, begging forgiveness. He kissed her feet, even the ground beneath them. There was nothing the old woman could say or do. Weeping, she took her leave and returned home with her brother Salim. But longing for her child, home became foreign to her, and before long she died, following her husband into the other world. End of narration. So, today we captured chapter 42 and 43 via narration. Let's do a brief impression before we go ahead and close the episode. So, chapter 42 talks about the entry of a new character in the story, if you may, right? Majnu's maternal uncle, Salim. Salim will play a pivotal role in the happenings towards the end of the story. And yes, despite his age, he makes all the effort and reaches Majnu. First of all, finds Majnu and then reaches Majnu. Talks to Majnu only to understand that there is very little that Salim can say to Majnu to convince him to come back. Of course, like everybody who visits Majnu in the wilderness, Salim is shocked by the state in which Majnu is living there, and despite all his rationale, despite that beautiful story that he shares with Majnu, the fact remains that Majnu is not convinced to come back. And that is when Salim realizes that there might be another way. Maybe his mother would be more persuasive. Maybe his mother would have more impact. And in chapter 43, he brings back Majnu's mother to him, hoping that the mother will be able to convince Majnu to come back. Of course, it's a very emotional chapter, chapter 43. Majnu meets his mother. Nizami has beautifully captured a mother's love. a mother's fearlessness, a mother's forgiving nature, right? It's very heartwarming. A short chapter, but leaves a deep impact. And again, the mother uh, tries to convince Majnu to come back, tries to tell Majnu how much hurt and grief his state um, has given, both to the father who has already passed on and the mother who feels she's very close to death herself. And Majnu again explains to his mother how difficult and impossible it is for him to survive in the world of humans, in the tribe, at home. According to Majnu, the only place he can call home is love. I love that line. It is very beautifully written when Majnu tells his mother that my home is my love. Nowhere else am I at home. And then, of course, he tells his mother, Mother, do not insist on my return. Forgive me. Do not insist on my return. And again, just like Salim, the mother eventually realizes that Majnu is not going to come back. Majnu is not willing to come back, and she takes Majnu's leave with a very heavy heart. Seeing the current state of Majnu must have been devastating for her, and yes, it was, because after she reaches back, she does not live long. She too passes on. So that was chapter 42 and 43 for today's episode. If you like the content, do share your feedback with us. We will come back with a new episode where we will get into chapter 44 next time. To all the new viewers, as always, strong recommendation to access the DGMZ introduction episode, which will give you a good insight into the motivation and objective behind this podcast. For DGMZ Miniseries, like I said at the beginning of the episode, there is a dedicated playlist. Feel free to go through it so that you can enjoy all the episodes that we have recorded so far. I'm going to go ahead and end the episode now. I'm sending a lot of love and light to all you dear viewers, and thanks for watching.